genre.
Welcome to the Doctor's Companion presents Doctor Who: The Long Way Round, the weekly podcast where we review and discuss every episode of Doctor Who, one doctor at a time. I'm Scott Corelli.
I'm Cass Fredrickson.
And I'm the sound creature.
Today, that means you can only just repeat words and phrases that Cass and I have already said.
Yeah, Bumblebee style.
You're already failing.
Bumblebee style.
Today on the show, we'll be discussing Scherzo from Big Finish Audio, the Eighth Doctor's 12th story. And Scherzo kicks off an interesting period in our our time with the Eighth Doctor, because this is the beginning of what is called the Divergent Universe arc, following up on the events of Zagreus, as we talked about last season on Long Way Round. However, this will be the first and last story from the Divergent Universe we'll be covering. But I think it works out really well because of the way this ends. It's almost like, what they do in the Divergent Universe, that's just between Charlie, the Doctor, and God. And,
and maybe not even God.
Maybe not even God. Who knows what's going on out there? We're going to meet them on the other side of getting out of the Divergent Universe. But for now, we're talking about Scherzo, which was released in December of 2003. It was the 52nd release from Big Finish Audio, and it is written by Robert Shearman and directed by Gary Russell. And this is the very sort of experimental, very let's use an audio drama to do stuff that we could never do on television, kind of story that only stars our two leads and no one else. It features there are other characters, but because they're all voiced by them, it doesn't, and they're sort of like versions of them. It's like this weird kind of echo chamber of an episode of just like these two characters. It's sort of like the audio equivalent of a bottle episode. Mm-hmm. So I'm really curious, what you all thought of this. Was this your first time with this story for you, Cass?
Yes.
Okay. Interesting. So you haven't dabbled in the Divergent Universe before now. Okay. It's funny. I saw a hint of what you think of this one.
Yes.
But it's so funny that you call it like one of the weirdest things you've heard, because if you just kept listening to other Divergent stories, you'd be like, oh, that was the least weird of all of these.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a few in here that are very, very weird. I'll talk about a few of them when we get to our next Eighth Doctor story to sort of fill in what happened during the Divergent arc. But this one is as abstract as this one is. There's another one that is a real love it or hate it story that is very controversial in terms of what the fuck did I just listen to? What is this?
Interesting.
So,
okay.
Yeah. But yeah, what did you end up thinking about this one, I guess, as a whole, other than it being weird?
I think I liked it. I So I was making cookies while I was listening to this, and Norman walked into the kitchen, around the end of episode 3. And he like laughed at the expression on my face, and he was like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, I don't know. So yeah, I think I liked this. It is very abstract, in ways that we'll get into, I'm sure. But I tend to really like Robert Sherman's work on like these Big Finish audios.
Mm-hmm.
And like this kind of has a similar vibe to Chimes of Midnight,
Mm-hmm.
in like the like trapped in a space kind of like horror elements.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like, because I didn't know, I wasn't sure if Robert Sherman wrote this until you said that he did, but when, like, knowing that, it, like, feels correct, I guess. Yeah, I like aspects of this. I like the Doctor and Charley dealing with their bullshit, but yeah, I don't know, I think I liked it overall. It was just very bizarre.
Yeah. Nick, just for your peace of mind, Robert Shearman did in fact write Chimes of Midnight. He also wrote The Holy Terror, which we talked about last season, and he wrote Dalek.
Yes,
the introduction of the Daleks to New Who. So kind of a prolific and sort of like important writer in Doctor Who. What were your thoughts on Scherzo, Nick?
The episode that I kept being reminded of, the other Doctor Who story, that this reminded me a lot of, is Wild Blue Yonder, which is also a two-man show. It just kind of relies on these two actors and their chemistry. Like Wild Blue Yonder, Scherzo bravely and confidently veers into the horrific existential side of Doctor Who that we don't get a lot of, but we know the franchise is capable of. I think, kind of like Cass, I think by the end, this was a worthwhile listen, especially for like the performances and like the themes brought up. But it's an unpleasant listen for me for a lot of it, just because of like the way the Doctor treats Charlie, for plot reasons. It kind of like the Doctor emotionally terrorizing the companion is never like my favorite thing the show does. So whenever it happens, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, we're doing this. I am a god and you are an insect, and you're lucky that you're on my shoulder, even if it's like, but I was doing it for plot reasons, stupid. Now let's go have another fun adventure. But yeah, like terrific and horrific ideas and concepts that really take advantage of the audio medium. So I was like consistently engaged by it. And yeah, but yeah, they discuss the concept of this being like entry level Divergent Universe is like, whoa, okay, oh boy, I don't want to think about what that means.
There's an episode in which there's an episode where like how do I describe this? Where you think that you're listening to the Doctor and Charlie in this other universe playing these roles as like royalty or something like that. And it goes along and then at the end the real Doctor and Charlie show up, and you find out that you've been listening to insects who are imitating them the entire time because they watch Doctor Who.
What?
Yes,
Wow,
correct.
That's
that
cool.
That is an entire story, and like the Doctor and Charlie are only in like the last like 2 minutes of the whole thing. But you're like left thinking, because it's about like what Doctor Who as a show should inspire in society, and that's what that's what it's about. It's like a society that is like inspired by Doctor Who. But they're like insect creatures. They're like not humanoid at all, but you don't know that listening to it because you're just hearing voices.
Right.
So yeah. And then you get to the end and yeah, it's crazy. It's a crazy the Divergent Universe is nuts. But yeah, that's one that really pissed a lot of people off, and or they really love it because of how weird it is. But it's like one of those things where they're like, why did I just waste my time listening to 2 hours of a bunch of characters that I don't care about and don't know, because they're not actually the ones So anyway,
especially because like you have to buy these. You have to like subscribe. Yeah.
Right,
No, I get
right.
that.
Yeah, exactly. So Scherzo is probably a top 5 Big Finish audio for me. I love this so much. I love the horror of it. I love the like sort of like existential thoughts on it, and I also like love what it's saying about, like, I love how stripped down it is to a point where like this is a story about like what the Doctor and their companion mean to each other. And so like Robert Shearman has created a story in which they have nothing to rely on except for each other, and that's the entire plot. And I just think that it's really, really well done. I don't even really think that the Doctor is that mean to Charlie. Not to like completely disagree with you, Nick, but like, yeah, I don't know. I love everything about this.
I don't know. There were in episode 2, when they get into like the nitty gritty of like what their deal is, there were several lines that he said that made me audibly gasp, because I was just like, oh my God, like that's so mean.
Yeah, but like they're coming off of like everything that they just went through with Zagreus, and it just like, I don't know, it felt like things that needed to be said, and like not for nothing, but like I don't like the Doctor to be knowable, I guess, on a like fundamental level, like like there's stuff that I like about like 10 and 11 and like all these guys, but like every once in a while I like that they do something that you're like, whoa, where the fuck did that come from? Because
and like this is a being that's thousands of years old and does not operate on my morality or sense of time or whatever.
Exactly. I like that. There's like a part of that I really like, and I don't think that it is necessarily, it never quite strikes me, I guess, as like a condescending, like, I am a god, you are an insect kind of thing to me. It always just kind of feels like, look, man, there's no matter how much you think you know me, like you're not really going to be able to. And that's just something you're going to have to accept if you want to like hang out. Like,
I guess to be, please, Cass. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I think that's really interesting that you put it that way, like the concept of being known, because like to me, like this story was about like the horror of being known, like the like what that encapsulates, like good and bad, like knowing someone, like capital
Absolutely.
like I don't know, that's really interesting because like you're like, oh, I don't like it when like we know the Doctor, but like that's to me what this story is about.
No,
like,
no, it absolutely is. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I don't disagree with that at all. But like, that's kind of like, I guess that's like why the companion Doctor like kerfuffling doesn't really bother me so much, because it's like, oh, do you want to know him? Well, strap in, I guess.
Yeah, and like, but in the same way that a lot of Perry and Six was so unpleasant, and it physically made my shoulder, in the same way that when you're with like a couple, that you're like, I don't like the way he talks to her. I don't like this. And I just found a lot of those nerves coming up during a lot of Scherzo. And and again, bravely, the story is so focused on that unpleasant, dark feeling that it was just like, oh boy. But then it ended in a very like, oh, okay, cool. Like I'm glad I sat through this story.
Yeah. I guess as I don't know, maybe I'm being too revealing with this, but as someone who is a very passionate person who talks with their hands a lot in public, because I'll get very passionate about the thing that I'm talking about in the moment. And I have had, and I will be doing that with my wife, who knows me very well and loves me and is married to me and is totally accepting of like, this is how he is sometimes when he gets very passionate about things, and have had strange men walk up to us in our conversation and try to take her aside to be like, are you okay?
Oh my God.
Yeah. And it's just like, so like, I guess I don't, that angle on it just doesn't bother me. It doesn't ruffle my feathers the way that it probably does you, Nick. And I think it's just because like, I don't know. It's that thing, I guess.
I actually like,
yeah.
For me, it was like the coldness, the very like matter of fact, like way in which he just like says some of those things to her.
Yeah.
That got me.
And kind of like, and the opposite, kind of rebuke almost what I said about this being like, oh, I'm a god, you're a bug. It was like, no, he's like a fucking, like I imagine like a boyfriend doing that, of like, she's put all of her carts on this dude's basket, and it's like, I don't give a fuck about you, you idiot.
Yeah.
I'm a cold. And she's like, oh no, I'm even more alone than I thought. And it's in service of this greater story of like, oh, Charlie thought she understood the doctor, but didn't, and maybe was like, wasn't as capable of whatever this voyage was that we thought. But, you know, it resulted in a very like, I say unpleasant, but I guess unpleasant in the same way that like something like Annihilation maybe, or I haven't seen that animated series Scavenger's Reign, where it's like, I feel like I need to take a shower for some of this, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think there's just something like really special about them daring to tell a story about a companion attempting to, and the doctor attempting to share, but the companion attempting to truly know the doctor. And when you truly know someone, you also need to know the ugliness and accept that part of them, you know? And that is, that's like a step that like, I think that like a lot of people aren't willing to take, you know, at a certain point. Like you see that side and then you're like, oh, okay, I actually don't love them now that I know that. And sometimes that's like the end of a relationship, whether it's romantic or not. You know, it's like learning that one of your friends voted for Trump, you know, like, it's just like, oh, okay. Now that I know that, like, I don't think I can be your friend anymore. Now that I know that ugliness, you know,
which is, I don't even think this is a tangent, because like you said, I think this is about the relationship. To me, in my head, watching the show, there is kind of an inherent power imbalance between doctor and companion. And therefore, I think I'm always sort of going to be on the defense when it comes to like, whether it's Perry or Charlie, of like, well, what did you expect? And it's like, I don't know, like, did you tell her what was going to happen when you like romantically took out your hand and extended it? And like, and Charlie's circumstances are so specific because of the Zeppelin and the adventure and the endless Agreus of it all. So yeah, there's,
yeah.
I do like that they kind of address that though, because like there's that part where the doctor is like, oh, you ruined everything. Like I gave, like, I sacrificed myself to save you and now you're stuck here with me. And she is like, well, why did you even do that? Like, why? Like, I wasn't making you, like save me from the Zeppelin or whatever. Like, why did you do that? And
are you just mad that I ruined your heroic act? You know?
Yeah. So I like that they like kind of dug into that. And yeah, no, I think because this ends very optimistically. So I like that. Like, I like ultimately like that they're able to like sort through all of this like emotional baggage, but like in the moment, I was like, oh my God, like, you know?
Yeah. So okay. So Scherzo. Yeah. So okay. So where we last left off, you know, the TARDIS is taken off for the Divergent Universe because the Doctor was just like, you know what, fuck all y'all, I'm out of here. and Charlie has like basically like like she's like secretly on the TARDIS. Which is weird because like you start this story and it doesn't seem like she's secretly on the TARDIS. It just seems like she was there. She's like not hiding the fact that she's there anymore. But yeah, like, you know, the TARDIS lands and, you know, sort of like they get out and it vanishes, and the doctor's like afraid to leave the TARDIS because he's like, there's nothing out there. And she's like, well, if there's nothing out there, why are you afraid? And he's like, no, you don't understand. There's nothing out there. And then when they go out there, the TARDIS disappears and they're in just like kind of a white void, though they can feel a glass tube around them. And then they just walk. And some being out there is giving them the corpses of something to eat. To eat on as they walk, and each episode has like a time jump between them, so it's not like a direct continuation. There's not really even any cliffhangers in this, really, yeah, it's just them walking presumably for like weeks on end in this empty void, talking about their feelings, as well as like trying to figure out what's going on, as like their conversations are repeated to them in like an echo chamber. And the doctor is like, I think they're trying to communicate, but they don't understand our language. So they're trying to get like an intonation of a question using our language, but like, we don't understand what they're trying to say. Just that I think they're trying to ask a question. And Charlie is just like, I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on. And then, yeah, eventually they sort of like find themselves in like different, they have to like evolve by merging into each other, becoming a new being, but then separating their minds into like these like separate little like areas, like spaces where like Charlie is in like a, what is it, like her home, her old home, or her old,
yeah, it's like her parents' living room or something.
Yeah. And is talking to a version of the doctor who is like acting like her daughter, pretending to be her daughter. And she's like, no, I've never had a daughter. And it's like, I guess maybe that's supposed to represent like what her life could have been. Maybe if she hadn't like continued her adventures with the doctor, I don't know. And then the doctor is back on the TARDIS and talking to Charlie, who is also the other being. So like they're talking to the other being, but the other being is being the other person in each of these conversations. And then they work their way out of that, realize that they'll be better off together, and then smash through the glass and walk into the rest of the Divergent Universe without the TARDIS. And that's kind of the story, basically, in terms of like plot, because like it's hard to describe the plot because all of it is so abstract. You know?
Yeah.
But
Heaven Sent as well. Another probably little comparison point to this.
Oh, true. Yeah. That one's a solo adventure. Well, this one is actually the first story of in Doctor Who period since Edge of Destruction to feature only the main cast.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was like I don't know, what is that, 20 years or 20, 30, 40 years? 40 years. 40
Edge of
years.
Destruction? Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause
Like
that's
40
Hartnell.
years from Edge of Destruction. Yeah. Pretty wild. So favorite moments, I guess. To
go back towards the beginning, one of the first concepts that really got under my skin and appreciated, and kind of like you said, Scott, is taking advantage of this format, is when Charlie slowly begins to realize that the blinding light, the fact that her eyes are open but she cannot see, is in fact a side effect of being in this Divergent universe. And the Doctor makes some sort of analogy of like, you know, if some animals can't see outside of the ocean or, you know, in the sun. And then the way India Fisher performs it is so chilling when she's like, wait, are you telling me my eyes might never adjust to this? And this just might be what sight is like, as long as, and she's like, yeah, dummy. That's why I didn't want you to come here. You can't even begin to think how fucked up this place is.
Yeah. All of their senses are like so messed up. Like she doesn't feel hunger, but she's like passing out from hunger, but she doesn't.
Well, because there's like moments where they regain their senses, like when the sound entity like wants them to eat, and then like they're like driven to, which I thought like, because then I think because there's a part where they start like adjusting to like evolving, I guess, like adjusting to the situation, and they're like, yeah, no, it's not so bad. And the horror, I think, of like the the occasional reminder of like, no, this is not what normal looks like. And I don't know, like it's really esoteric, but I think it's really interesting like how it kind of touches on how easily people can adjust to like extraordinary circumstances, you know?
Oh yeah. I love that moment, Cass. I thought so much about like when Charlie's like, well, this isn't so bad, you know, like, yeah, all my senses have been taken away, and Doc's like, don't you dare say this isn't so bad. Remember how good you had it. Like,
yeah, like
that
remember
regret
what you
is
lost.
remember what you lost. And you know, it made me think of like how I had to learn to adjust to like life in lockdown back in 2020. And
Yeah.
I found my Charlie coming out of like, this isn't so bad. I've got my coffee, I've got my morning walk. And then the doctor in me was like, no, like, remember. And I think the difference, but then I was thinking this morning of like, well, the difference between this and what Charlie's talking about is I was doing it for some sort of greater, like, well, no, this is helping us all. This is keeping us safe. But this might just be, as the doctor keeps like, you know, reminding her, a futile, senseless act that I'm not even happy that you did it. You did it for no reason, and sit on that.
Yeah, it's it's an interesting because like one of the things that like I think the doctor like always, you know, he's always talking about admiring in humans is like their ability to like overcome anything and like, you know, see the brighter side of things, but then this is like this is the reverse of that. This is like when that goes too far.
Yeah.
And you know, like even he is like, no. There are times when that's great. This is not one of those times. You know, and I think that's really interesting too. It's like the way that the situation is challenging his own beliefs in humanity, and you know what he even sees in a companion. You know, because they all tend to have like very like, you know, a lot of them all have like certain characteristics in common, you know, especially in New Who, but you know, even throughout. And so it's interesting seeing him be, you know, sort of like directly challenged by that. Yeah,
because at some point the doctor compares the companion to a skull that at one point was in vogue to keep from Memento Mori. And because he's like, I bet, like, why do you think I have a companion? The companion's like, Charlie's like, love, companionship. Like, you stupid twit. You're a skull. You're a skull on my desk to keep death in mind. And she's like, oh, okay. Well, but then at the end, he rebukes that because there's a thing, survival of the fittest is invoked, where the creature is like, well, I'm the child. I'm the next step. So I should begat you and you need to die. But because they have the ability to choose one another, the third creature is left high and dry and like, well, who's going to take care of me? And then it dies. And it's like, oh, love and compassion and empathy are survival skills just as much as anything else.
Yeah, it's an interesting it's also interesting like going from this, you know, with the Eighth Doctor to, you know, getting into New Who, where the one of the justifications for him always having a companion is about like seeing the universe anew every time through their eyes and the need for that. And so
like
to me it's right. But yeah, so it's interesting to me, like almost seeing a place where that moment or that turn for him evolves, you know, of like, seeing them as like well, I need to remind myself of like that not everyone is immortal like I am.
Mhm.
I just like having them around because I like seeing the smiles and
Yeah.
the joy on their faces when they see a spaceship for the first time. I just I love that sort of evolution of the Eighth Doctor. And I mean, I mean, clearly, like, that was not the plan. Like, this is 2003. They didn't even know that the Eighth Doctor was going to lead into the Time War eventually. But it is the thing that I love so much about Doctor Who is like how well everything can fit together that way. I guess all of those blocks, even though they're all made by different people making their own puzzles, you can take a step back and see like the grand tapestry and be like, wow, it does kind of fit,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Just hearing you talk about like, oh, I like having them because when they see a spaceship and their face lights up, like that made me think of like when people ask other people why they have children. And you hear that sometimes of like, oh, it's kind of like you get to experience all this stuff again through their eyes. And it's so I'm trying to form a complete analysis over like the ending where the Doctor is Paul McGann is playing a form of Charlie's daughter. Because Charlie and her relationship with her mother is something we've gone back to several times throughout their story. And again, there's just so much there. I just don't know quite how to shape it.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it almost feels like the being, the entity that they're interacting with in this story is showing Charlie like almost like what it is like for the Doctor, like you said, like having a companion, could be like very much like having a child in many ways, and the joy of that, but also the fear of that, and all of these things. I mean, he's like talking about how like he's always afraid for her all the time, and like it's kind of like why he's always there's this push pull with his relationship with her, because he's like, I do love her, but also like I don't want her to know that because I want her to go away because my life is dangerous and I want her to be safe, So like there's that push pull, and then you have this creature being like, it's kind of like this, Yeah. How does this feel? This is weird, right? Having a daughter that looks like the Eighth Doctor for some reason. Yeah, I don't know. Like, yeah, I definitely think there's like some thematic resonance there that is interesting. But yeah, it is so like everything in this story is so like unknowable and abstract in a way that I really enjoy, because it leaves it open for so many different kinds of interpretations, I guess. I think that's cool.
Something I wanted to bring up, the episode that I kept thinking of while I was listening to this was The Devil's Chord. And I think that it's like a really interesting kind of like companion piece to that, because like the abstractness, I guess, of like sound and like music in sound being like a force on its own. And one of the things I really liked about this was like the little like parables at the beginning of each episode that the Doctor, like the little story that the Doctor was saying about like just I don't know, like I think I kind of want to go back and like rewatch Devil's Chord now, because like I feel like I can trace some of that from this.
Yeah.
Like sound monsters and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so interesting. Devil's Chord wasn't even, I love that it wasn't even on my radar, which goes to, again, how many things you can take from Scherzo.
Yeah.
But, oh shoot. I had like a Devil's Chord related, just like how sound and stuff.
Yeah, that whole sequence with like no sound, with the thing where they take the sound away, and there's that whole like sequence with that is like very, I mean, that's playing with it in a visual way, the lack of sound, whereas like this is like all you have is sound, so it's kind of like an equal and opposite thing, but
because
cool.
I thought it was interesting, like, because there's that part in Devil's Chord where the maestro's talking about like the music of the spheres, like the music of nature, and like they talk about like even though the Doctor and Charlie aren't saying anything, there's still like so much sound, like the sound of their footsteps or their heartbeat or whatever, and like how all of that just compounds. I don't know. I thought that was like the thing that I was most interested in.
Yeah.
Concept wise.
Or how the sound creature was using audio clips of like help or, you know, stupid little girl. But the Doctor was like, no, ignore the words, listen to the tone, listen to that's what it's trying to communicate. And you, the listener, then get the opportunity to do it with Charlie and kind of decode this oral cipher that the episode is giving you.
Yeah. That's really cool.
I didn't like that there was a jump scare in every episode, though. Like an audio jump scare.
However they designed that voice, the sound creature's voice was always so chilling.
Yeah, that like weird, like kind of like post-production, like crunchy growl thing. Yeah, that was good.
Cool. Cast the nursery rhyme things, which I'm glad you brought up because like we haven't brought. I kind of for like the first couple found myself wondering like, wait, are these about Razalon?
Oh.
And like he kind of created a universe where everything was his way and everything was in his design, but in doing so created a world completely bereft of what makes the universe worth being in, like music and love.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I really like this story, and I like all the abstract stuff. I like all of the horror, like existential horror elements of this, and I really like all of the sort of like relationship deconstruction in this. I just think it's all really, really good. I will say this, and I don't know if you guys picked up on this listening, but this was like the number one inspiration for Filling the Void, the Geek by Night episode that we did.
Oh, that's so great. Yeah. I mean,
okay.
Just like two characters with no choice but to hash out each other's shit and say the ugliest, darkest thing that they've been keeping inside of them about this person that they have a great deal of affection for.
Yeah.
That didn't occur to me while I was listening because I was like caught up in the WTF-ness of it.
Yeah, sure.
But like when I was like decompressing after, I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of like what we did with Geek by Night, but
yeah, for
much
sure.
less abstract.
That is true. I don't think our show could survive being this abstract.
No,
it's just not that kind of thing.
No, but I like that it's like this is like that concept stretched out into like an hour and a half, like the macro version, like sci-fi horror version of like a bottle episode.
Yeah,
I don't know. You know.
Yeah.
And speaking of horror sci-fi, I mean, we learned that the being, we learned that they've been walking in a loop because as their eyesight evolves, they're able to kind of make out more of their surroundings. And the Doctor's like, oh, we've been walking around on a ring. And this being that we've been eating is just a replenishing body, a husk that we've been feeding on for nourishment. And it's like, we learn that it's extracted from Charlie. And so it's technically her genetic offspring. And so she refers to the creature a couple of times in the story as the only child I'll ever have. Which is yet another like horrifying kind of morsel to ponder on.
Yeah.
It's this one's a special one for me. Because it's like so specific. I don't know, like just so like unlike anything that I think Big Finish has ever done. It's also the last Robert Shearman Big Finish audio adventure. It's there's one more that we will be listening to at one point, but this is the last one that he wrote. He writes a short in an anthology episode, but this is the last like full length one that he ever does for them. So
yeah, are we gonna be covering the Sixth Doctor story that Dalek is based on? Okay,
yep.
Cool.
I think so. Yeah, it's in the. I believe it's in the list. Because it's Evelyn.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I mean, I guess listeners, I mean, think about the episodes that we've pulled up as references is like Wild Blue Yonder, Heaven Sent, you know, some of like the boldest episodes of the show that have been produced.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a wild one. Anyway, so that's Scherzo, and next time we talk about the Eighth Doctor, we'll be talking about his final adventure with Charley. And it's called, I believe, The Girl Who Never Was. Is that right? Yeah, The Girl Who Never Was. The Girl Who Never Was will be the next Eighth Doctor story that we'll be discussing. So this will be the end of the sort of like covering every single Eighth Doctor story, just because if we stayed in the Divergent Universe, I believe we would be nearing the end of the Fourth Doctor's run before we would get out of it.
Whoa! What?
Yeah. Like it's long, and most of it is not very good, unfortunately. So not all of them are this interesting. Most of them are I'll get into it next. So next time I'll be talking about, because like these Big Finish audios, they don't have like a lot of like behind the scenes material. I'll be basically giving you guys a recap of the Divergent Universe as we go into Charley's final story and saying goodbye to Charley and the Eighth Doctor as we transition into a new era for the Eighth Doctor that is heavily inspired by the RTD era of Doctor Who. So we transition out of like classic Who structure into new Who 45-minute episode, like one-off episode structures, which is very exciting. And we get to meet my favorite Big Finish companion and one of my favorite companions of all time, Lucy Miller, who I'm so excited for you guys to meet and get to know. But yeah, next time, The Girl Who Never Was and the end of Charley Pollard. But that's next year, actually. That's like post-Christmas special and everything. First, next week we'll be talking about the 10th Doctor again. Speaking of the RTD era. And Smith and Jones will be meeting Martha Jones, the most unsung of the I think New Who companions, I believe.
Absolutely,
yeah. So Martha Jones next week on Long Way Round. We'll talk to you then. Bye, everybody.